So I don't know about you guys, but for some reason I've really been thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds lately. Just last week we did that video on the Dark Synchro monsters, and in today's video we're continuing my series where I review cards that characters in the anime used, but I talk about them in relation to how good they were in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG format. As we're talking about Yusei's cards here, I do want to acknowledge we will not be talking about any of the speed spell cards because those cards never really were in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. Many of those cards actually do have counterparts in the TCG, but as far as the actual speed spells themselves, because they were never printed in our format, I can't really review them in today's video. That being said, Yusei did play a lot of cool and powerful cards that I want to talk about in today's discussion. As always, please remember I cannot possibly mention every single cool or good card that Yusei used, but I will try to mention most of the big highlights. But first, I want to tell you about today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Ridge Wallets. If you're sick of your outdated, bulky leather wallet, then a Ridge wallet is the perfect upgrade. It's sleek, industrial, and you can easily hold up to 12 cards, and there's even a convenient money clip on the back for carrying cash. Ridge wallets even have a lifetime warranty, so you'll never need to buy another wallet. The Ridge team is so confident that you'll like it, they'll let you try it out for 45 days, and you can send it back for a full refund if you don't absolutely love it. If you're interested in picking up a Ridge wallet, make sure to click the link in the description below, and don't forget to use promo code Dzeeff in all caps for 10% off your order. One of the most iconic Yusei cards has to be Junk Syncron, and this card was pretty good in the TCG as well. Junk Warrior, the obvious synchro monster that you make with Junk Syncron, that card, maybe not so much, but Junk Syncron as just a good generic tuner monster, yeah, this thing saw a lot of play, especially early on with synchros being released in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. You could oftentimes, yes, summon a level 5 synchro instantly with the Junk Syncron, but more often than not, you were maybe even making bigger synchro monsters if you already had cards on the field. Reviving a level 2 monster to then make like a level 7 or level 8 synchro monster with your other cards was a pretty decent play back in the day when synchros were pretty early on in their release. That being said, nowadays, yeah, you don't see a lot of Junk Syncron, but the card is certainly not terrible and it has seen enough play that I wanted to mention it in today's video. Junk Warrior, yeah, not really, but Junk Syncron, now that's a pretty good monster. One of the biggest cards that Yusei is known for, besides Junk Syncron, one of the other big Yusei cards obviously is Stardust Dragon, and this thing is fantastic. It always has been, and even though we don't see it so much anymore, I mean, this card saw competitive play for years. I mean, well into Xyz monsters and Pendulum monsters, and even a couple tops after Link summoning. I mean, Stardust Dragon is just an incredibly powerful, competitively viable card that obviously was also heavily featured in the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds anime. This is how you do an anime boss monster right. I mean, it's just fantastic, especially compared to the other cards that were around the original era when Stardust Dragon was released. I mean, this thing was just a total powerhouse. Being able to negate destruction effects while also bringing itself back every single end phase when you use that effect, that was so incredibly strong 10 years ago, and even nowadays, it's not like the worst effect compared to modern releases. Yes, we do not see Stardust Dragon around that much anymore, but for a very long time, this was one of the best level 8 synchro monsters in the entire game. Yusei also played Effect Valor, one of the oldest hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and a card that is still seeing play right now. I mean, that's one of the really cool things about looking at the cards that Yusei used in the anime. A ton of them did see play back in the day, but also a ton of them are currently seeing play right now. We're going to look at some more cards later in this video that, while they are pretty old, are actually still seeing competitive use right now in 2020. Anyway, yes, Effect Valor is very, very good. Maybe more restrictive than more modern releases like Infinite Impermanence because it can only be used in your opponent's main phase, but still a very good hand trap that, yeah, a lot of people have used. I mean, it's currently seeing play right now. Maybe not as popular popular as it was last format, but still a very good option, and it's always there, you know? Even when other hand traps are more popular in a format, you always just have to wait a couple months, and then once again, Effect Valor is back in players' main decks. This card has been played so many times throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and it's cool that it actually originated from the anime. So obviously Yusei used many Syncron tuner monsters. We already talked about Junk Syncron, but now let's talk about Quickdraw Syncron, a very interesting tuner monster with a very weird effect. First off, compared to the other tuner monsters, especially that we used to see back in the day, Quickdraw Syncron is pretty high leveled. I mean, level 5 is not very common for tuners. Secondly, this card's effect is very weird because it can only be used for synchro monsters that require a Syncron tuner as material, and this card actually acts as a substitute for that Syncron tuner. While it could be argued that Quickdraw Syncron does sort of invalidate many of the worst of the Syncron tuner monsters, personally I think it's completely fine, because if you never had Quickdraw Syncron, then maybe the synchro monsters that required those bad tuners never would have seen play. I mean, Drill Warrior comes to mind because Drill Syncron is pretty darn terrible, but because Quickdraw Syncron existed, then people could actually summon Drill Warrior without having to play Drill Syncron. More recently, we've seen Quickdraw Syncron being played to summon Crystron Helki Fibrax. You can search it with another card we're going to talk about in today's video, Tuning, but also it's just a very good free special summon for a lot of decks. Yusei also played Dzeeff Dragon, one of the coolest looking ultimate rares that I've ever seen. It instantly revives a monster when you normal summon it, and also it's a level 4 tuner, which is a really great level for tuner monsters just in general, but it does have two pretty big restrictions. First off, it can only be used as synchro material for a dragon type synchro monster, which is obviously a pretty big downside because that does limit the number of synchros that you can make with this card by quite a lot, and also the other materials for that synchro summon cannot be level 4. That's obviously meant to prevent people from just like normal summoning Dzeeff Dragon, bringing back a level 4 monster, and then making like a Stardust Dragon. Even with these restrictions though, Dzeeff Dragon was great for many years because you could summon cards like Black Rose Dragon and Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Just make sure you don't accidentally summon Brionac, because even though it does say dragon in its name, it's actually a sea serpent type monster. One of the classic Dzeeff Dragon plays from back in the day was bringing back Dandelion to make Black Rose Dragon, blowing up the field and summoning 2 tokens for further synchro summons. Dzeeff Dragon has seen tons of play in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. It's one of the best cards that Yusei has used in terms of how much it actually saw play in the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG format, and it's definitely a fan favorite for many players, myself included. Yusei also played the currently banned Level Eater, and I will say here that while this card was cool back in the day, especially in like Quasar decks, I know they liked this card quite a lot, it wasn't until recently when this card really became an issue. With Link summoning, you can use Level Eater on a big monster over and over and over again, and Link climb into some pretty scary cards. While synchro summoning obviously was the original intention for Level Eater, eventually it just became a little bit too powerful with Link summoning, so Konami banned it, maybe a little bit prematurely, but the card could have been the cause of many crazy combos. Before I move on to the spells and traps, I do once again want to mention I will not be covering any of the speed spell cards because that is not a mechanic that we have in the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG. I'll also say here the vast majority of the trap cards and some of the spell cards that were used by Yusei in the anime were really bad and way too specific. There are so many cards that obviously were created just for one specific moment in the anime that when they were introduced into the TCG format, no one really played them. I remember back when 5Ds was still going on that so many packs that I would open would just have all these random filler cards, many of which were featured in the anime. That being said, Yusei did play some very powerful spells and traps that I want to mention right now. For example, he played Tuning, you know, a fantastic normal spell card that very recently saw play before Jet Syncron was banned in decks that wanted to search out Jet Syncron and sometimes Quickdraw Syncron as well. Tuning is a very strong reinforcement of the army for any Syncron tuner monster monster that also mills the top card of your deck to the graveyard. This thing was even crazier in the anime. I believe it milled cards equal to the level of the monster that you were adding, which honestly is insanely broken, especially when adding cards like Quickdraw Syncron, which would then let you mill the top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard, potentially setting up your graveyard for future plays or maybe even triggering some graveyard effects. Even without that crazy effect from the anime though, tuning is still a fantastic spell. Yusei also played the crazy powerful combo enabler 1-for-1, which is currently limited and maybe someday will be banned. I mean, this card is always a problem when it's featured in the top strategies. 1-for-1 looks very unassuming. It's a -1 in card advantage. You lose the 1-for-1 and the monster that you send from your hand to the graveyard to special summon any level 1 monster from your deck, which oftentimes does set up a pretty big combo. Anytime a level 1 monster is printed, especially with an effect that triggers on special summon, players are always running towards 1-for-1 because the card is just so strong when you actually open it. While there are plenty of other cards that I could talk about in today's video, you know, we could make this video an hour long if we wanted to, the last card I want to mention is Starlight Road. I mentioned that Stardust Dragon is still kind of seeing play even right now, and the main reason is this card, Starlight Road. Yes, this card is not as good as it used to be. I mean, this thing used to be like a staple 1 of and maybe even 2 of in like every single deck. Being able to stop cards like Heavy Storm and Black Rose Dragon and Torrential Tribute was a huge deal back in the day. Nowadays, if you ever see Starlight Road, it is almost always in a control deck that is desperately trying to not lose to Lightning Storm or Harpy's Feather Duster. Anyway though, that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below which anime character cards you would like me to review in the next episode of this series. I'll link right now at the end of today's video some of the other installments to this series, just in case you guys want to hear my thoughts on other anime character cards. I'll see you later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.